Hello and welcome back. My name is Cora Yoder of Coriander Quilts, and we have such a fun video planned for today. Today is my day to share a Moda Blockheads block, and so in conjunction with that block, I am sharing how to turn the 12-inch size into a pillow, which is always a fun thing that we can do with any individual quilt block. Before we dive into that, I do have a viewer question of the video, so I want to share that first. All right, our question comes from Ms. Lizzie 3772. She says, I've been quilting 20 plus years and Scrappy is still very intimidating for me. Mixing designers, fabric lines, scale, etc. is out of my comfort zone, but I like the look of other people's Scrappy. How do you tackle Scrappy? I tend to overplan. Well, I think a lot of quilters find themselves in this same position. And I did share a video about how I approach making Scrappy quilts. It's been a couple years, but I will link to that in the description box below the video so that you can take a look at that. I think I probably fall into what some quilters would say is an over-planned Scrappy approach, because I do like planning my Scrappy quilts. I like to make sure that my prints match nicely, that I'm mixing designers together that I like mixing together, and I do put some thought into that approach. So you might think you're over planning, and you might be. I'm not going to say you're not, but I do think that it is okay to plan your Scrappy quilts. I also think it is great to throw all the rules out the window and mix everything together if that's the sort of Scrappy quilt that you enjoy making. Because there are lots of quilters who will throw it all into one quilt and they end up with these amazing Scrappy quilts. So it just depends on the look that you are going for and the approach that makes you most happy in your Scrappy quilts. There are a couple tips. I don't recall if I mentioned these in that video that I'm linking below or not, but two things that I want to mention that you can do. Number one, when I was teaching quilting classes, I would always encounter people who were very intimidated by Scrappy and the thought of not putting any planning into their Scrappy technique. And so one thing that I would do is I would have them put all of their scraps into a brown paper bag and choose a piece of their next piece that they needed for their block out of that bag. And that kind of eliminated a portion of the planning. This is something that I have done myself in doing Scrappy quilts. It's kind of fun just to let chance turn your quilt into whatever it happens to turn into. And it's kind of a fun approach. It works really well for string quilts where you don't necessarily need a specific sized piece, but it's a nice way to just let chance decide what your quilt block is going to look like. So that might be a fun approach for you. Another option that I like to make sure that quilters know is available to us is over on the Moda Fabrics fabric download page. I'm going to link to that below as well. All of the fabric lines are shown there. I did a screenshot and printed off what the page looks like that I am referencing. This is a spot where you can go and look at images of fabric lines that are upcoming as well as previous fabric lines. Not only look at those images, but if you have access to Electric Quilt, for example, you can bring those images into your quilting programs to design your quilts. This is the spot where you would be going for those fabric downloads. But what Moda has done is they have divided all of their collections into different categories. They have classic, basics, metro, style, Ruby Star, and Christmas. And when you are thinking about mixing collections together, one kind of nice thing to do is to look how they have categorized each of those different fabrics. So all of these yellowish ones right here are in the category style. So if you were thinking about mixing things together, these listed as style are going to mix together pretty nicely. You'll still want to pay attention to motifs on the fabrics, colors in those fabric lines, but those are going to mix together pretty nicely. Classic will mix together pretty nicely. And then Ruby Star, those fabrics are going to mix together pretty nicely. Again, paying attention to the fabrics itself, but that is going to split fabrics that are really traditional from those more modern fabrics, from fabrics that kind of fall in the middle. It sort of splits them up a little bit for you. So if you did want to plan a little bit more and maybe do a scrappy quilt featuring more traditional fabrics, think Primitive Gatherings mixed with Kansas Troubles, mixed with Betsy Chuchin, you know, some of those more traditional fabric lines, you would have them already split into categories. So that is just a really nice resource to know that we have available to us, not only for making scrappy quilts, but maybe you just want to see what's coming next, what we have in stores right now. You can see listed the dates of when the fabric lines are going to be in the store, so you kind of can start planning for your projects. So I'm going to link to that resource down below, as well as that video I mentioned, to give you some ideas of ways you might approach making scrappy quilts, especially if you do like to plan things out just a little bit more. All right, we are now going to move into the blockheads portion of this video. And my block for today is this cute little bordered star block. And I have made it in the 6-inch size right here using my Peachy Keen fabrics, as well as Blueberry Delight by Ann Sutton. I've been mixing together those two fabric lines for all of my blocks for Moda Blockheads. If you're not familiar with Moda Blockheads, I'm also going to have all the goodness that you need to find these blocks linked below. The patterns are available to download for free, and today you are going to find a block pattern tutorial for my bordered star block over on the Moda YouTube channel, so I will have that linked as well. Now, what I have planned today is that fun pillow tutorial that I chit-chatted about just a little bit. Before I show you that, I have the beginnings of that, I want to take just a little bit and show you my blockheads blocks so far. I've shared these over on my blog. Every week I will share some of them, but it's been a little while since I have shared everything all together. My blocks are a mix of 12-inch and 6-inch blocks that I am going to be mixing into the larger quilt. I have shown my layout for my quilt, but that's all the further it's gotten. I haven't actually started figuring the math on that too much, or piecing some of the other bits that I will need to put all of these blocks together, but I will be sharing that before too long. So these are my 12-inch blocks. I'm going to go kind of quickly through them, but I did want you to see what these look like. My large blocks, the 12-inch, all will have a blue border, and then my small blocks, aside from just 2 of them, I think, have mostly white borders. So that is what's going to work best in my layout. So that's what I have been doing. And it's been really fun to mix the 2 sizes. And the 2 fabric lines too have been really fun to mix together. I love the way they have been turning out. I love this one. I think that turned out so pretty. You definitely get some favorites as you make your way through these blocks. Those are the 12-inch, and then these are the 6-inch so far. I did need more 6-inch than 12-inch, so I still have some more of these little guys. This is one of my favorite ones from this whole batch. I love that one. That was, I think, Robin Pickens did that one for us. Here they are. Some of the blocks I have used an alternate block. This was a block that I used an alternate block for just because I am not doing any of the paper pieced blocks for my quilt. I don't mind paper piecing. I think it's fun, but it always takes me a little bit longer than traditional piecing. So I've been a little short on time over the last couple months. So for some of these blocks, I have made something a little different and noted when I made something different over on my blog. So those are the 6-inchers. That's what we've got currently. And now the fun little thing that I am adding today is a pillow tutorial if you wanted to make a pillow pattern with your 12-inch bordered star. I'm going to tell you exactly and show you how we could do that. So I made this beautiful block using Starberry. I love the way this turned out. I think this is so striking. And I also really like that it builds in a little border, which works so perfectly because now all I need to do is add outer border strips and sew them together. And I'm going to have an 18.5-inch pillow top pretty quickly. So I cut out this text print from Starberry. All of these fabrics are Starberry, which is in quilt shops right now. I will tell you, I've heard that this large floral print is selling quickly, so if that is one you've had your eye on, I would purchase that sooner rather than later. So I have cut, these are 3.5 by 12.5-inch pieces, rectangles that I will sew to the sides. And then these are 3.5 by 18.5 that I am going to sew to the top and bottom here. And that is going to give me an 18.5-inch pillow top. I am going to, it's going to be a few days my time, but in just a moment I'm going to have these all sewn together, and I'm going to quilt this up as well so that we have a completed quilted pillow top that we can then turn into our finished pillow. And I think it's going to be so pretty. I'm just going to do a simple crosshatch for the quilting on this, and it should go pretty quickly. So the next time you see me, I'm going to have a beautiful quilted pillow top to show, and then we're going to talk about that pillow finishing. And I have my pillow top quilted, machine quilted. This guy gave me a run for my money. Do you know how sometimes you start a project or maybe part of a project and you think, oh, I am just going to be able to bang this out in no time, and it's something I do all of the time and it should go lickety split. That's how I approached this. There was nothing new, nothing I haven't done lots of times, but every step of the way it gave me a fuss. So I thought I would share a little bit about that with all of you. So it started with me going over to my cutting table to mark my pillow top. I always, when I am straight line quilting, I like to mark my lines so that everything is straight and tidy. And you might notice that we have some, I'm going to call it organic quilting. You've probably heard that term before. Really, that means my lines are not as straight and tidy as I would normally have them be. And the reason for that is, so my blue marker, I like the blue marker, the Dritz Mark Be Gone water soluble marker. That's what I use to mark just about everything that I machine quilt. Well, my marker was dried up, so I needed to purchase another, and I didn't have time to run to the quilt store, so I decided just to order it online and have it shipped to me. So that went great. Blue marker arrived, and I went to mark everything, and I know that it doesn't show up as well on blacks, but it really didn't show up well on my black. And so I marked a few lines and then I held it up in the light. I thought, well, maybe it's just not bright enough, and that's why I can't see it on the black. And no, I still really couldn't see it on the black. So I knew I needed to come up with another method of marking so that I could do my lines. And I do have a Bernina that has a walking foot with the guide that I could just mark the first line and then use the guide for all of the subsequent lines. I debated getting my Bernina out, decided I didn't want to do that, and remembered that the last time I had used it, there was a little piece that had broken off of it that was important to the function of the sewing machine, and I had just never done anything about it because I use my Juki for just about everything. So I thought, well, that's fine. I will use my Juki. Surely I have the same guide for my Juki. I got out the Juki walking foot. No, indeed, I do not. And then I thought, well, that's fine. I'm just going to try taping on my Bernina guide to the walking foot of my Juki and see if I can kind of rig something up so that I could use that walking foot guide, which actually worked surprisingly well. That was something that did work. So we got the walking foot put on. I have my guide taped to my walking foot with some shipping tape. It was staying in place. It wasn't infringing on my sewing, and we are ready to go. So I started sewing. I got maybe 2 lines done, and then what was the first thing that went wrong? My thread broke, and that was kind of a nuisance. So I rethreaded the machine, started again, and then my needle broke. And I thought, well, is this because of my rigged up walking foot? And I checked that out, and it really did seem to be fine. But in needing to replace my needing to replace my needle, I discovered that I was almost out of thread on my bobbin. And I thought, well, thank goodness, because that would have been the next thing that happened. I would have gotten my needle replaced, started sewing, and my bobbin thread would have run out. So I took out my bobbin thread and started filling that up, because I always have 5 bobbins ready to go. But of course, that was my last bobbin that I had. And so I needed to fill up another one, started filling that up. And then my thread, well, first of all, the thread, something happened and it just was twisting all around and not going onto my bobbin. So I had to snip off all of that twisted part, get it back up into the bobbin, start it threading again. And then the next thing that happened is the thread that I was feeding off of completely flew off my machine and fell back behind, which I've never had that happen before. And I'm still not quite sure why that happened. So I was kind of having to hold it there. I even tried putting the little, I don't know what the little thing is called, over top of the thread so it would just stay there, but that made it unhappy. And so I kind of had to babysit it while it was loading up that bobbin the whole time. And I finally got that loaded back up, back in my machine. And then I was ready to go. Not sure why that happened. But then after all of that, everything else went just fine. But boy, I had a tremendous start to trying to get this little quilt top quilted. So we do have some organic quilting lines. Maybe you can see them a little better. They're not horribly crooked. I just really like marking my lines. They're just so straight and tidy. I need to trim up my loose threads here a little bit. So straight and tidy and no waviness when everything is marked. So that's always my preference. This is fine, but whew, I didn't know if I was going to get this one done. But I did, and now you guys have a little bit of a story about how sometimes even people who do lots of quilting all of the time and make lots of things all of the time sometimes encounter problems, and sometimes our projects just don't go quite the direction that we thought that they were going to. The next step for me on this project is to trim up my edges of my batting and my backing fabric and turn this into a pillow. My goal is to stop filming right now, quickly go upstairs, get that done, and be back here in maybe half an hour or so with a completed pillow top. Based on how things went yesterday, who's to say when this next part will actually be filmed? But that is my goal. Keep watching and see if I am able to be back here in just a little bit. Well, and look at that. Indeed, it took about half an hour, so much better than my experience yesterday. We have a completed Starberry pillow. I think it's looking so cute. I really do like the way that block works in this pillow. It just borders out that star so nice. This center point is such a great spot to use a focal fabric that maybe you've been hanging on to. I love that Starberry fabric for the center, but there are a lot of fabrics that would be really pretty as that center star. So this was kind of a quick overview of turning my Moda Blockheads block pattern into a completed pillow. I have a much more thorough video tutorial that I shared that I will link below that teaches you how to turn any 18-inch quilt block into a pillow from start to finish. So I am going to, as I said, have that linked below. That's exactly what we did here. When we added these borders onto the sides of our quilt block, we turned that into an 18-inch quilt block. So that video tutorial walks you through everything from marking it for the quilting to making your backing, envelope enclosure, and is such a nice resource if you do want to turn some of these fun blocks that we've been making for Moda Blockheads into a pillow. One final reminder, you can find a tutorial for this center block pattern over on the Moda YouTube channel. So if you need a little extra help with how to piece that, you can zip over there and watch that video, and you can find where to download the pattern in the description box below this video as well. If you have any questions about anything I shared today, any funny comments about my debacle yesterday, feel free to leave that in the comments below. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I will catch you again next time.